these are American shacks, right? And, you know, shacks actually look different in different parts of the world. So shacks are a bit different than boxes, but not a whole lot. What they have in common with boxes is that they're nice and beaten up, which means you don't have to be an expert at architecture to draw these things, right? Shacks tend to be built by amateurs, and they're going to have all kinds of little things that give them character. But one thing you want to do is see that, for example, if we look at this wood down here on the bottom, you'll notice that the wood and the spaces between the wood here is different than the thickness of the wood that we have on the wall, you see? So in terms of our rule of threes, we're going to start saying, well, you know, thin and thick, and then here is medium, let's say. Or we could say, this is corrugated tin nailed to the top, right? Corrugated tin is that kind of rippling tin that you see on sheds and things like that. It's probably one of the most common building materials anywhere in the world. And that's because it literally lasts forever. So, you know, you build a building, the building falls apart, they pull the tin off and build a new building out of it, right? So here is a shack, and then here they have tin, corrugated tin on the roof. So very, very sort of amateurishly built. Here, you know, holding the roof in the front up, we have literally a stick taken off a tree. Here is the tree it came from, right? And then, you know, all of this stuff is handmade. Let me see here. Here, you know, here is a shack truly falling to pieces. And this is the kind of stuff you'll be able to find when you look online. And again, you're going to see thick or broad pieces of wood. Then you're going to see thinner pieces of wood in here. I'm going to be able to see through the shack. I have a metal roof on the shack. The other thing you're going to see is lots of arcs and things like this, and also things sticking out. You'll notice on the boxes, I was really focusing on getting things to stick out. Here, some people in front of their shack. And so again, tin roof. You'll notice that look here, they just sort of folded the roof over like this. See, this is why people like corrugated tin. And again, it's a combination of, you might say, store-bought lumber and other lumber which they've just cut down. And, you know, so everything is very, very sort of handmade and hand-built. So this has a lot of character. The window might be a found window. See, here's some other windows over here. Here's something that's corrugated tin. The United States is full of places like this. So here is an old mining, you know, sort of station. So they were mining for something. I think it was lead in this case. And this is an old, you know, train house. So they would store the train here, and then the train would come out and it would do whatever it was going to do. And then they would store it back in here again. And of course, it's all falling apart. And this is really nice for us because it's all stuff sticking out, you know, and it really is, you know, quite lovely. Here, same thing, you see. Here, different pieces of wood sticking out. You're going to notice that we have thick pieces and thin pieces. So you really want to get in there and do thick and thin. So it's a box, but a little more so. Here's a good box, right? Boxes with boxes next to it and boxes next to that, right? So here, basically, you have a prism on the roof. Here, you have a different prism on the side. So this is boxes and prisms. You just draw those in perspective, and then the rest of it is details. But notice that the wall here is relatively simple compared to the small details. This is something that I would want to push if I was doing this. Here is a town just sort of falling to pieces, right? Probably it was never much, and now it's even less, okay? So again, you'll notice corrugated tin roofs, see? And here it'll have a corrugated tin roof. Here they're using thinner pieces of lumber, probably because they had thinner trees. And again, you'll notice, see here how you step up into the house. So, you know, when you're looking at these things, you want to look and notice the things that are a little bit different than our normal lives, right? So, you know, when I give these assignments in classrooms, I'll say design a dungeon, and everybody designs something that looks like their bedroom in Burbank, right? Everything looks like it came from Home Depot. None of this stuff came from Home Depot, so none of it's going to look that way. And of course, it's all falling over, so it's all tilting in one direction or another direction. Here's a true log cabin. These are stones that have been stacked up down here to hold up the front of the cabin, if you can believe it. See, here are the stones back here for a nice big fireplace inside, probably nice and warm in there. But, you know, the thing is, you can see that it's kind of like bowing in the middle. Okay. Here, a little bit, you know, almost looks like a showpiece cabin, right? And so here, what you have is the big pieces of wood, and then they've shoved smaller pieces of wood in between with grout in order to keep the cold out during the winter. When you're building these cabins, you want to take a look at things like this right here. This is a door frame. So you want to notice that there's an entire system for enclosing this door in here. So you want to get that door frame in there. Really great cabin, right? I mean, it looks like it's been there for 100 years. And if you look here, they're using your regular pieces of wood, right, to hold it up. And then, admit, and then, you know, here, again, corrugated tin roof because it's the cheapest. Here, you can come up and you have a little bit of a lookout. Here, you're stepping down. Backwoods living, okay? Let me see. Here, completely fallen apart. But corrugated tin and steel. Here's some wood over here. Here you can barely see the cabin. Okay. This is one that I wouldn't do because, you know, this is some amateur designer coming in here and just kind of saying, oh, we're going to make it all crazy. So I don't want you to go off in the wrong idea. This is one of those things I intend to take out. Here again is an old store. The foundations have given way. So you'll see this whole thing is basically falling off the side of the building. And here is the window frame falling out the side of the building. Here, you know, is literal. This exists, by the way. This is not some Steven Spielberg movie. This is actually a mobile home park, which is, you know, a high-rise building. And these are literally mobile home trailers. Okay, barns. You see the spaces in between? These barns were frequently, by the way, built with these spaces in here because it lets air inside. Otherwise, it gets mildewy inside. A lot of awkward structures, you know, like this kind of visually, this feels too heavy on top, but that's good because that's what says that it's a shack. That's what tells me that it's a shack. And again, you'll notice that the windows are not level, right? So the windows are all in sort of different spots. Here, it's being supported by having the wooden, you know, the support beams come down and they're resting on rocks on the ground. So it's pretty haphazard. This is actually, the way you seal this up is you have a piece of wood nailed together, and then they take thinner pieces of wood and nail them on the outside, and that's what seals it up. So this is kind of a cabin building technique. This would have been early 20th century. Cabins falling apart, cabins next to a road. These have notched wooden corners. So if you're going to do these corners, just take a moment and figure this out. Some of you guys were doing notched wooden boxes, which I thought looked really quite good. Okay, so this is the Kentucky Historical Society. Notice this here is a triangle. See? If I want to make any downhill road next to a house, all I have to do is put that triangle in it, and I can make any road go downhill. And see how irregular this is? So you want to take this and do something with it. This is literally Dust Bowl. So this is the Great Depression Dust Bowl families in Kentucky. Okay, so see how everything is just kind of resting on logs. Here, this is old enough that they're using shingles, which is really just thin pieces of sort of cheap wood. And you'll see that, you know, they were using smaller trees. See how small the trees are? So the wooden slats are smaller too. Something a little more grand. This may be the last one. There we go. Now this is a Victorian house, which is kind of gone to seed. So, you know, this is not truly speaking a shack. This was actually a pretty nice house when it was built. It's just been poorly cared for, so it's kind of going to seed. Here it is from another angle. In your reference material, you will find, you know, shacks, which I have photographed, and you can use those, or you can basically do reference on Instagram if you or on Pinterest, and if you just go in there and say American shacks or you know, Kentucky shacks, you'll find lots of great shacks. So here are Western towns, or Western ghost towns is another one you can enter. Western ghost towns are really good. So here, and the ghost towns, you'll notice on the front, they would put a big fancy front here, see? So it's like a billboard saying, look at our fancy building. And then you'd basically have a shack-like building behind it. And that was very common. So they had peak roofs behind the flat fronts. Shack and car. And here are some interiors, see? So they fall apart on the inside too. Here you'll see that the wooden floor is built right on top of the ground. So there really isn't even a foundation under this shack. It just has wooden floors right on top of the ground. The thing you have to understand is that these people who went out there weren't necessarily fine craftsmen, right? They were just doing their best. So this is like a pallet sitting on top of the ground. And this gives you an idea of what interior design would have looked like to them. This is Victorian. And where we like things to be a little bit sparse, we're very influenced by the Bauhaus. So, you know, we sort of say less is more. And they would say, no, you know, more is more. So you're going to have texture here and texture here and texture here and texture here, pattern everywhere. You know, it's sort of like I would have a hard time sitting in this room. It would make me anxious. I think there would be so much going on. Here, literally, this building exists out west. I've seen it. And it started tilting over on the side. So they shoved this telephone pole in over here to hold it up, right? And this is animation in a nutshell right here. This is animation in a nutshell. We built the building wrong. It's starting to slide over. So we're just going to shove this in here and that'll fix it for the next 20 years. And then here's the rest of the town sort of falling apart. And there it is from the side. It's in Bodie. But again, the framing is all in there. See how the entire thing is bowing out on the side? And then here's some more interiors. Okay. So what I like about shacks is they have a lot of very cool shapes. See, so this is really a cool shape. This is a cool shape. Okay. You know, they have a lot of history. Here's truly falling apart. See, there's the flat front. There is the peaked roof behind. And, you know, this thing has long since been abandoned. And, you know, in the 1920s, which would have been about the time this car was made, there would have been people out here. Again, see, even the flat front is falling apart here, but that's what that was a flat front. All right. So this is an old movie theater right in here, and it turned into a post office. This is Darwin, California. I've driven through here. This is all of Darwin, by the way. This is about the whole town. And then another subset of this, which I don't want you to do because it's too complicated, is ships, right? Ships falling apart are fantastic. Here's another cabin falling to pieces. See, here it is bowing this way. This is actually the far side of that cabin that's being supported. So really great shapes, right? And so this is like boxes, but they're really great shapes. And if you're having, you know, if you had a little difficulty with the boxes, just do a simpler shack like this. If the boxes were, you know, not quite as much of a challenge, then maybe come in and do something a little bit more like this or one of the more extreme ones. So here, fences, I have extensive fence files that you'll find. Fences are fantastic because everybody makes them differently. So they're all made differently and they're very irregular a lot of the time. And fences, most of the time, if you get into sort of middle America, practical places, these types of fences were made of excess wood. They weren't going to waste new wood on fences. So old things went into fences. Okay, I think that's the end of this particular file. Okay, so, you know, last time everybody did shacks that were little cubes. So that's why I'm showing you some of these shack files so you can see that if you do the research, you can find shacks that are really great shapes. And that's what we want you to do, is just really great shaped shacks. Okay, so now I'm going to go to here and I want to talk about things I want you to pay attention to when you're doing shacks. Okay, I'm going to come in here. Everybody can see my screen, right? Yeah? All right. Okay. Shacks have varied materials. And so like on this shack here, I'm going to have wood that's widely spaced. So my wood might be widely spaced like this. And this is very much like the wooden planks. But rather than copying the shack exactly, I might just come in here. I might put a little crack in here. See? I'll come in here, but the most important thing here is that we keep these widely spaced, see? Because I want big, medium, and small. When I come down here, this here is coming forward, and these, I want smaller spacing. And I have to make this very clear, otherwise the viewer is not going to be able to see it. So, you know, I'm not so much worrying about the drawing here as I'm saying, get this spacing to be different, right? So now, see, this is clearly different. Everything we're working with here is really about clarity, getting this clarity to work, okay? And then at the top, up here, I have corrugated tin that's going like this. And I want that corrugated tin probably to be the smallest shape, see? So I'm going to come in here, and this corrugated tin, I'd make it even smaller than I drew it here. I'd put this corrugated tin in. So what I'm getting is small, big, and medium. Okay? So small, big, medium. Over here, I'm basically going in and putting in a review of everything we talked about last week. And then here we're moving on. So remember, this wood, you could beat it up a little bit if you want. Here is the corrugated tin, right? That corrugated tin, which will go a little bit like this, see, it's actually a pretty small corrugated tin, is on top of the wood. So I may want to come in here and have a little bit of a drop shadow down here to help me create separation in there, okay? The corrugated tin is also nailed in place. So if we look at corrugated tin, it's a great opportunity to create something that's a little bit messy. So we're going to come in, And we're going to have a piece of corrugated tin under it, see? So here's my corrugated tin going underneath. So I'll put this in, and I can start nailing things in place. So, you know, are these shacks going to be designed and nailed tidily? Probably not, right? So you come in here, and the corrugated tin is going to be nailed in place like this. It might have leaves on it. If it's on a roof, leaves would be great. And again, under it, we might have very widely spaced pieces of wood, see, kind of going like this. All right. So we're putting together small, medium, and large. And this is an important thing with this shack stuff here. So you come in here and get this in, and then this is just like this, see? You know, just putting in little knot holes will help. Simple and complex, just like the boxes, okay? All of that is important. When we get to things like the wooden poles, okay? If I draw a pole, I'm going to come in and say, first I start by drawing a doweling like this. And then I'm going to exaggerate my pole. So I come up like this, and there's a trick to it. I come up, and then I go like this, see? So the trick is here to here, here to here, okay? And that's going to help me to get this to wrap around. So it'll help me to get that pole in there. So just like on the wooden planks, I want to have one side be simpler and one side be more complex. Like that, see? All right. And then we can put knot holes in here like this, which indicates that, you know, parts of this thing have been cut off. And that will help us to get that in there. All right. So when we're doing little wooden chunks and things like that, first I'll put in the cylinder. Then I'll come in and I'll make it irregular, because what you're going to find is trees tend to be a little bit more triangular than circular, or at least more so than we might think. And then I might come in here and have this coming off like this a little bit. See? All right. So this will help us to get little, you know, surfaces underneath and on the bottom there to sort of fit in there. All right. What else is important here? Okay. So this has a very amateurish window frame. Okay. So right in here, that's very amateur window frame. And this starts getting us into construction techniques. So if I'm looking at a balcony, okay, I'm going to come in here and start giving you some construction ideas. If I come in here and I want to support a roof, I may come in and have a notched beam system where I come in and I go like this, and then this comes out. I could even have my notches go like this. Now, in animation, we would tend to make them irregular because it's more interesting. Okay. And then I would come in here and erase out this in here. I'm working on a computer, so it's pretty easy for me to do. And you can see that what they've done is they've notched the wood, and they've gone in here and made this, and it's going to be very, very strong. This is a proper building technique, okay? And then we'd come in there, and for fun, we'd come in and we'd just put in, you know, knot holes and things like that to make this work. We might come in and make this a little irregular up here if we want, but this is notched. Okay? Now, if we're putting up a modern building, if you come in like this, you'll get a piece of steel right here that comes in like this. And then it'll come down like this. And we slide the manufactured piece of wood in like this. And then we will bolt everything in place. So This is a modern building technique, and you'll see these bolts in here coming in, and this comes down like this. Now, this is not as interesting from the standpoint of making a fun shack to look at, but it is a modern building technique. Another one is to have this come like this, and this is coming in here like this, and we notch this slightly because usually this is notched on wood construction, but what they're doing is they're saving a little time, and that is notched, and then what they're going to do is just nail these in place. So these will be nailed in place here. And again, it looks a little different. Okay. All right. So if we're looking at old shacks, you might have this coming up. So it looks like an old tree stump. And then we get up in here and it is notched into something up here. It too could be an old tree stump, right? And we could have wooden, inserted trunks coming in here like this, and they're working the same thing. They're just doing it with logs, okay? So these are different building techniques, all of which are real building techniques that people will use, okay, to make roofs work, okay? The roof line of your building, sort of on the inside, it may go up here like this, and then it'll split here, come down to here, but this isn't going to be strong enough, so they're going to have a piece of wood going across like this, nailed here and here, and maybe even down below, and that's what's going to hold that peaked roof together. And again, in modern building techniques, that peaked roof would actually have a cap at the top, which would be made out of steel like this. If you go to Home Depot, you see all these things, right? So this is right in here. And this would be bolted, see? But here it'll be wood, and it'll be nailed into place and held there by this. So if we look at the inside of our shacks, you're going to start seeing stuff like this. Okay? All right. So, come in here, make it fun to look at. Make this shack fun to look at. Those of you who are doing sort of a nice style pass on this, keep going. And if you're really just learning how to draw this stuff, that's fine too. Don't even worry about it. Just get in there and kind of make this stuff work. Pay attention to these details and you'll start getting everything to work for you. All right? So, what is a shack? Basically, a shack, a simple shack, is a rectangle like this. And it has a prism on top. So if I divide this like this and send this straight up, that'll give me the center of the prism. I'm floating the roof of the shack over the shack so you can see it. I might arc this back in here a little bit. That's your basic shack. It's pretty boring, but it's a basic shack, right? If I want to have a patio coming off the front, I'll do this, or maybe I even bring it off the side so we could walk around the side. Okay. And if I want the shack to be elevated, this is what I do here. And I'm going to do this with any building. If I was, I was walking in Croatia and I saw buildings going down a street and, basically the buildings are flat and the street's going down. So you saw these triangles repeating themselves over and over again. Okay. The only difference here is There is the ground underneath. I might come in here and draw a shape on the inside like this, you see. And then I'm going to start putting the supports down here. See, I could start putting the supports in there, and you're going to look at the reference material when you do it. The other thing you may see on shacks. So we come over here and say, well, here is my shack. It's long. Okay, first I have to get this volume to work. However, the peaked roof is over here. So I'm going to bring the peaked roof up. It's going like this, right? Which is going to be more interesting. Okay. Then, you know, my shack may have a little shack built on the side of it, which is right here. It too might have a peaked roof that comes in like this. Remember, any peaked roof like that is a kind of prism. So far, all I'm doing is working with prisms and boxes. That's all I'm doing, including even this down here is still a prism. Okay. I could come over here, and again, you're looking at reference material, right? I could come over here and say, you know, here is the far side of my shack. This is some of that crazy stuff you see up on the hills I showed you on the reference. See, this is going like this, but this is going down a hill, right? So now, you know, I have the shack going down a hill over here, and if I want, I can have things going like this. I could have, you know, this could be a balcony and there's more shack down here, or I could put a second level down here. This is what's going to happen when we get up on the top of the hill. Look at those things. All right. Does everybody follow this so far? All right. So look for an interesting shaped shack. I don't mind if you do one of your shacks or two of your shacks like this to figure it out. Nice, simple shack. Don't do all of your shacks like this. Try to get into some of these more interesting shacks. All right. When we come over here, I'm arcing my roof and I'm going to come in like this. And I'm going to come over here like this. And most of the shacks, to save materials, didn't have much overhang. I tend to suggest people exaggerate that overhang a little bit. So we bring the shack down like this. Most of them are just going to have an overhang that's very, very small. Remember, materials were precious to them. They didn't have a lot of materials to work with. So that's part of it. Now, when I'm doing this, I'm going to scale things. So I'm going to come to a part here, I'll say right here, and I'll say all of my shingles are only this long. And I'm going to bring this back here, and then I scale this across. Now again, one thing I like about having you guys draw old buildings is you don't have to turn into little, you know, industrial designers. This is more about character. So shingles are triangular shaped pieces of wood that go like this, and this is what keeps the rain from getting in, see? Which means the outside silhouette of my shack is going to go like this, and I want that because the important part of the outside of my drawing is the silhouette, see? And I mentioned that before. In here, we're going to get a little thing that we have to think about. This is facing me. So from here, this is coming out and down. This is coming out and down. This is like a wrap over in the fabric in the costume class. Coming down. This is coming out and down on both sides. And then here it's going away from me. So it's coming out and down, coming out and down, coming out and down, coming out and down. Okay? So a little larger just to make it really obvious. This is coming out and down and in, out and down and in, out and down, you see, like this. And then in the center, you go like this, and this part starts going like this, and we don't have to worry about it. So this is a two-sided object. 1, 2, 1, 2. So it comes towards me, see? This is a one-sided object. It's going to feel like it's going away. All right? Pardon me. Okay. So the shingles are coming down, and the shingles on shacks could be kind of a mess. But before we get into that, we don't want to draw all of our shingles exactly the same. So we have to create an eye path. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say right here is my eye path because I want to project this front of the shack forward. See? So when I'm doing the shingles, the shingle comes down and there's going to be a shadow under here. The shingle comes down, there's going to be a shadow under here. The shingle comes down, there's going to be a shadow under there. So I'll come in and I'm just going to lightly grid this thing off. Now, I don't have to exactly follow my own grid. So it's not about who's the most accurate wins. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, okay, now I want to create an effective shadow pattern. And I'm going to basically stick inside this area in here, and I'm just going to draw this forward. And this is one of those things where it takes me too long to sort of draw this nicely. So you'll have to do that. But what you do is you come in here and you basically keep this is number 1. That's the focal point. And when I get up in here, I let my shack or my roof line fade out a little bit, see? So I get in here. So what am I doing? I'm using simple and complex, and open spaces and closed spaces is another kind of simple and complex. And I'm coming in here and I'm going to bring the shack all the way to the front. When I get in here, I may want to have, because it is an old shack, I may want to have the bottom part kind of fallen apart a little bit, see, like this. All right. So I'm bringing all of this forward, coming in here kind of like this. Here, you've seen this probably on my Instagram feed. And actually, it's in one of the handouts. You can see this in one of the handouts. I'm catching a cold, so that's what you're hearing me sniffle about. Okay, so we come in here and do this. And it fades out. So this is the fade zone. So yeah, we're going to have some details up here, but we don't want as many details as here, because if you overly fill in this roof, you're going to get this checkered pattern that you're never going to be able to beat, right? So then I'll come in here and say, okay, all right, you know, I'm looking at my shack, you're looking at reference, it's giving you ideas. And I might say, here, I'll space the wood out like this. And down here, I'm going to space the wood out like this. So I decide that in advance. See, I'll come in here and say, this is in here. And then this is going to be much closer together, right? Down here. So bringing this in, let me clean it up a little bit. Okay, now, kind of like this wood here. Now, let's say I want to work this wall out. I'm going to say, I'm going to do what we call a call out. And I want you to do call outs for your shacks too. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, okay, I want to figure out what I want that wall to look like. Okay, because I'm not sure. So here, I want wide pieces of wood, let's say, that are going like this. And they're nailed in place. So they're like, you know, and then I'm going to have little things coming in here like this. And then down here, I'm going to have pieces of wood that are angling out like this. And you've seen these on houses. And it's coming in like this, see? So I'm giving myself close together, and I'm giving myself interesting changes in surface. So I'm going to come in here like this, And if I want, I can reinforce it over here like this, see? Now, this is a little old. Some of these things are going to be cut in different places. So I might come in here and do this. That reinforces. Don't do that too much. And then I might come in here and vary the shadow patterns a little bit. And by varying the shadow patterns, I'm basically just describing old. See? When I get up in here, these pieces of wood, I want to have be distinctly different. So I'll come up in here and, you know, and then when we get up to the roof line up here, see the roof is coming in and this is going to be much more irregular. See, it comes in and goes like this. So I'm creating a variety of visual experiences to see. Does everybody follow what I'm talking about here? It's a variety of visual experiences. And then down here, you know, I'm going to have a drop shadow coming from my roof. So that will help me. So I'm just going to fill that in a little bit quickly because, all right. So this is a call out, and you know what you're doing is figuring out, and then in here, see, I'm going to have my smaller chunky shapes coming down, and so that's going to give me big, medium, and small. See. So the shacks are going to suggest this, but you have to make it happen, right? You have to look at the shack and say, oh, I see. I'm going to pull this piece of detail and this piece of detail and that piece of detail. And I'm going to make something which is, you know, complicated. See? Medium, or, you know, simple. And then here is medium. And that's what you're doing. Okay? And you're turning it into a shack. And so here, outside silhouette's important, so I might come in here. I like this idea, see, down on the bottom, okay? And then carrying this over to the front. So I'm not gonna finish this shack. You know, the whole point of it is just to show you how to do this stuff. Okay, so we kind of go like that. All right, let's talk about some other details, okay? If I come up here and I'm gonna put corrugated tin on the roof, or maybe it's patched with corrugated tin, I have to have that corrugated tin, like if I have a patch in here, it still has to be the small shape that I'm working with, right? And by the way, you'll find a lot of these old houses, you know, when the shingle gives way, they replace it with corrugated tin because shingle's like an earlier building technique. And then, you know, the corrugated tin is going to have a bunch of little shadow patterns on the bottom down here. You know, so if we start building this thing up in here, see, like this, I want to get a pattern on my roof that's going to work with the corrugated tin. So let's take a look at my roof here. Within my roof, I might have a corrugated tin piece here. And if I'm going to have one, I tend to put one underneath it. I find it just looks better, right? And then I might have wooden slats on part of it because it's falling apart. And then I might have some more corrugated tin over here and more wooden slats. So if I do that, what am I doing? I'm creating simple, medium, and complex on the roof all by itself, you see? So I'm coming in here to do this. Now this roof has pieces of wood, see? And you'll see this on different roofs. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I want you to see it here so that it'll be easier for you when you look at the reference material. You see? And then we come in here and here's corrugated tin. It will be nailed up, right? These roofs you're going to find may have a piece of wood sticking out. Over here, we might have some shingles left, right? So this gets really busy over here. see, next to the corrugated tin, because there's some shingles left. And then we come down here. And remember, the outside of everything is all about edge quality, right? So an edge quality is stuff sticking out, right? So I want stuff sticking out. Okay. And then, here's something coming out here. And then, you may have, I've seen corrugated tin that's just sticking up over the top of the roof. That could give you some interesting edge quality, right? Line, mass, and form, knot holes. You see why knot holes say wood? Because it's surrounded by a bunch of other stuff. And then when we come under here, this is where, we're going to get a drop shadow, maybe, depends. It's your picture. But this drop shadow, and I'm just putting it in really fast, is under here. And that's going to give a big chunk of mass to your picture. And once you get that big chunk of mass in there, we start thinking of masses in terms of big, medium, and small. Okay, so let me back up on this a little bit. I'm sticking this mass in there. Now, if I stick a big mass in there like that, I don't want to just have a big mass surrounded by nothing. Okay, what I have to do is put around it other little things like this. And what I'm doing is I'm integrating it into the picture. So, I may want to come in here and have, let's say, a little bit more of a space or a seam in here, see? I may want to come down here a little bit and, maybe put in a knot hole, see, that's opened up. Okay? When I come up here, I may want to run up some things up here. There could be holes in this roof too, right? I mean, who says the roof is even solid? It's a shack. Right? And so here you're using line, mass, and form to put everything together. All right? And again, if I do this, now I've put the shack on a hill. Okay? And I could do things like make this stone, see? So the shack is now sitting on these stones on a, it's got a stone base here, let's say. See? And then, here is the doorway. Here is the step coming down to the front. And then we have these stones coming back here. The stones could be a little bit under the shack. In fact, I'd like it to be that way because it gives me a chance to throw some of my masses in here. And then, I'm going to integrate my shack into the world a little bit. I might have like a barrel back here. And you'll notice lots of barrels in my reference material. I stick a lot of barrels in there because they give you a nice secondary shape to put in here. See, so I'll have barrels back there, And again, I'm using thin, medium, and thick lines to make all of this work. Okay, so let's talk about, how this works and how I'm really going to set this scaling up. We put this in. Come here. So this is step one, right? Pull that in. So this is a prism and a box. And I'm going to say here, and I'm looking at my reference. So I'm breaking it down. And I'm going to start saying, okay, this is based on spacing like this. This has one space or maybe no spaces. And this has two spaces. So what I'm trying to do is vary it, right? So this will be like this. I might leave that completely open. I might not put anything in there. I might say they plastered it. And then I'll come in here and this is going to be much busier, okay? And already what I'm doing is setting my shack up to have this variety. And I am in the the middle of doing it. Okay, I've barely started and I'm in here and I'm going to have some supports coming out and I have to remember that I might see stuff here. All right. So that's the measuring part. When I put windows in, here is a window. First, the window has a frame on the outside, so the window will go like this. And I want you to look at these windows. They're going to be made a little differently. But remember, there are only 5 things we can do with a box. What we're doing right now is cutting a hole in it. See, that's what the window is, right here. Now, the window on the top might come down to here, and the window on the bottom could be farther in, you see? And everything has thickness, so I might have something like this. And if I have this coming down the side like this, I'm going to have, this could be inserted into the side of the house like this. This would be a very good call out. So you're saying, you know, I've never drawn one of these damn windows. This is when you come in here and you start doing this, you see? Now, in the reference material, which we're providing you, what you're going to find is little files that say wooden building techniques. And I'm literally, I'm drawing your attention to how they put this stuff together. That's what I'm doing, is I'm actually drawing your attention to it. And so if you go in there, and you can download any of these things, by the way, you don't have to leave it there. You can download any of them. Okay, so that's a window in there. And when you look, you're going to see lots of different kinds of windows. The main thing you need to see, though, is that windows are framed. Okay, a door is the same. A door is going to be here like this. A door is going to have a sill. The door sill is frequently raised a little bit above the ground. Okay, and that's because you don't want to let water in and things like that. And you'll find that in a lot of these cabins and things, the door sill is fairly high. So if we come up like this, see the door is coming forward down in here like this. And if the door opens in, it'll hang on the inside like this, and the door will angle in. If the door opens out, it'll be on the outside and it'll angle out. Okay? Doors, you know, a shack door will be constructed like this, and sometimes they'll be very irregular. And really old shacks, the doors were hung by leather straps, okay? And what you'll find is they'll tend to have a piece of wood that goes across like this, and that's holding the 3 pieces of wood on the door together. And then there's going to be a diagonal that goes like this, right? And that diagonal, the intention of that is to keep the door square, okay? And, you know, it works until the wood is old and the nails loosen up, and then the door starts to kind of sag a little bit. And you'll see this on old. So we come in here like this, and this is what it'll look like. And again, if I want to add character to the door, I'll come in here and I will vary these bottom shadows a little bit like this. I'm sort of saying, you know, the wood's a little different. It's moved around. It's not as thick in some areas as others. See? Throw in the occasional knot hole. And, you know, in this case, I might even go like this and say, you know, it's held up there by a wooden strap, or a leather strap rather, and it's held closed. You know, there's like a hole in here with a rope hanging out, which is really holding the latch together. Okay, you know, little things like this just to give it character, kind of make it focus attention. Things like this make a big difference. All right, some of your shacks are going to, you know, I'll show you shacks that are, you know, let's say have grass roofs, okay? So, you know, we'll have a shack coming in like this. And they're going to be the same. They're just going to kind of go like this, and this is going to come down, and then come down, see, kind of like this. And they're going to have thickness in the front. So you come in. So everything starts out as a volume, see? So I come here and I work this volume like this on both sides. See, I'll draw across like that. That's too low. Come in here, and then bring it back in. And then on this, what I do is I come to the edge, and I'm going to draw kind of like this on the edge. And then I draw out from underneath on the edge. And I'm really doing the grass trick I was showing you before. And I was saying, here's the grass, and then here's the grass behind it. Here, I'll come in and I'll break it up like this a little bit. And I'll come in and I'll say, well, this is the grass part of the roof hanging over what's below, okay? And then this is coming out from underneath, and I'm gonna have a little bit of a shadow pattern in here that'll help me. And then I'll come in here, this is hanging out underneath, and I'll have a little bit of a shadow pattern that'll help me. I'm gonna have probably a rounder roof because the grass will be bunching up on the roof there a little bit. And I'll bring this in. So what happens is you end up with this look going like this. And if I go into multiply, you know, you're going to start getting, you know, these shadow shapes in here on the bottom part of the grass in here. See, so I can come in here and sort of build that in here, and you'd get it down here too. See, so that's, and then, you know, somewhere the grass is facing away from the source of light. So right in here is where the grass is turning away, right? And then here it is over in here. And we're going to have little light shades coming in here. Grass, or a grass roof like this, is one of those things where I might go in and, you know, do a call out, right? Because remember, I want probably 2 call outs per shack. So we're going to say, I want you to do, you know, at least 6 shacks, okay? And, you know, 3, you know, fairly simple. And 3, ambitious. And, you know, this is going to be different for different people. Okay? So ambitious doesn't mean do something you're going to fail at. Ambitious just means, you know, try one that's a little more complicated after you've figured out the first 3. And then, you know, I'm going to want, you know, 6 call outs. Okay? And call outs are where you figure out how to do things you don't know how to do. Okay? So, you know, I would come in and design, you know, this here before I came in and put it in, because I don't know exactly how I want that grass to look, see? So I would come in there and do that. Also, I would look at reference material on how to do all this. I would never, you know, I'm going to say this. Never make it up. Always work with reference. Okay, so this here is exceedingly important. Never make it up. At Disney, if you're going to design a lantern, they want you to show the lantern that you designed your lantern from. They actually want it on the same sheet. One of the most amateuristic things you can do is to just make it up. It tells the art director you're clueless, that you have no idea what you're doing, right? Let's say I'm an expert kayak maker, right? I grew up in Alaska, and I'm an expert kayak maker. Alaskan kayaks. It doesn't mean I know anything about canoes. It just means that I know how to make kayaks. So even if I'm an expert kayak maker, I'm going to have to look at reference of a canoe if I want to design a canoe. Okay? And it's going to give you lots of little things that are going to help you. So you really want to be very, very clear about that. Okay? So the next thing I want to talk about is scaling for fun. Okay? So here we're scaling, but I could also scale and I'm just coming in and saying, okay, I want my grass. So here what I'm doing is I'm designing the big volumes first. See? Come in here, maybe bring that one out a little farther, right? And then here, this is where the grass is ending. And not only am I designing my volumes, but I'm deciding where the breaks in the grass are going to be. Okay? So here is the top of my grass sticking out. Here is the top of my grass sticking out. But notice how everything is on this nice S-curve, see? So it's really more about getting an attractive S-curve to work with my grass. And if I get that to work, what I'm going to get is the feeling that my grass and this, we're in a happy village. We're in a happy little village here. And all these big breaks would be on certain, key points like, 60, 40, 1/3, 2/3, that kind of thing, right? So this comes in like this. And then if I'm on multiply, good. If I come in here, see, this is the shadow side of the grass, see? So I'm starting to kind of design these nice sing-songy shapes, you see, into my hut shape. See, so this is starting to look, sort of pleasant Hawaiian, pleasant Polynesian village or something like that, right? So we're kind of going in here, and that's that sing-songy shape. So, if I'm going to design a stone wall, I'm going to do the same thing, see? So here I'll come in and say, and what I'm doing is basically sort of deciding how big my rocks are going to be in certain areas. And the important part here is where things cross, because those areas where things cross, like right in here, say, is where the eye is going to go. Because if I go like this, and then I start coming in here, that's where the eye is going to go, right? So I come in here and I can start designing my rocks within these shapes. I'm not obligated to stick to it. I mean, if I come up with a better idea, I'll do it, right? But if I come in here and I start kind of playing around with these general sizes and shapes in here, see, I can start making this rock wall. I might come in here and make this a little bigger. And then here, see, this rock will be considerably bigger. Okay. I get to the top here, some big stones on the top of the wall. I might put dirt on the top of my wall and have actually a little bit of grass coming out, having grass coming out in here. So step one here is to do this. Here I'm planning. So this is planning. And then this is executing.
20 minutes.
Till the end?
Yeah.
Okay. So you see what I'm talking about here? All right. Okay. So we're planning and we're executing. Okay. One thing you're going to see is that there are lots of different kinds of stone walls too. You're also going to see that there are lots of different kinds of fences. So, you know, in the reference material that I'm giving you, you'll notice that there are some fences that kind of go like this. And then going between these is something that goes like this. Okay? So it's tied together below, usually with wire, tied together on the top. And then this is a natural piece of wood sort of going like this. And you're going to start getting drop shadows coming in here like this. And you want to make this stuff very clear. So get your fence posts to really stick out. See, kind of like this. Get them to really stick out. And make this stuff really clear. Really as clear as you can make it. Okay? And then stick the wire in here. And this is overwrapping. We tend to overwrap everything. And then if I come in here and do this, see, this thing will start to feel like what we want it to feel like, which is, you know, a homemade fence. It'll come over here and then see, this will repeat it, see? So we may want to have this come in. And in this case, we'll have this be lower. A good thing would be to have one of these pieces of wood be thicker and the other one be thinner, see? So we get thin, medium, and thick. And then we bring this through here, see, and it'll come out the other side like this. And then, you know, here I could even go, you know, you can do all kinds of things with these things. All right. But you can't make it not clear. So I have to come in here, clean things up. You can't have it not be clear. It has to be clear. One reason for this is your story is usually about something else. Here, because of the nature of the class, we're learning how to draw stuff. So it's a skill-based class. But in the end, most of you are trying to go out into a world where you want to tell stories, and your picture serves another purpose. So the purpose of your picture is to, you know, tell people, in this case, about the environment that our characters are going into. Where are they? Who are they? That kind of thing. Okay? So that's a little bit of clarity. And then we start wrapping things around it a bit again. And then this could come in here, see? And that's going to give me some nice drop shadows, things like this. Draw this across in here, okay? This comes out, right? You know, you can still come in and put things in like this, all right? You can still have things coming out like this a little bit, create some visual interest, all right? Just keep it clear. The most important thing is clarity. Like the bottom down here isn't clear. So I have to come in here and say, this is here and this is here. This is here and this is here. So I'm just gonna erase it out. Again, it's easy on the computer when you do it. It's a little when you're working at home, do a marker stage first and then do this on top and it'll be fine, okay? When you're doing your sticks rolling over, in this case, remember that when this rolls over, here is where we might have a core shadow, but that could be too powerful. So we may want to just come in here and put some detail in here, see, like that, and then leave the top part simple, and this is complex. Another way we could do it is to come in and say turning edge, and just leave it alone like that, because when I put this in over here, and I put this in over here, this is also going to reinforce the circularity. So that's going to help you too, right? But when you're doing, remember I was showing you this stuff where you come in and you go ripple, 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 okay? And when you get in here, you're going to see that here is where the core is. Core turns into tone. When we come back into the light, it goes into the core again, okay? Here, core turns into tone. Here, there's the core, which is, the turning edge, right in there. And then we're going to come in here, it turns into tone, and then into core again, and this is rolling over. And if I do this, see, immediately my object is more dimensional. However, if I put a little line on the edge turning away from me in here, that gives me a turning edge, and that makes the far side of the light side dimensional. So when I come in here, I may want to come in and just have a little clear edge in here, and that's going to roll that over. And as a cheat, I can actually just put that edge on both sides and nobody's going to care. So I just kind of put that edge on both sides. Maybe occasionally I throw something like that in, and that'll make it work. Okay? So, this is kind of good, clear, illustrative drawing. Okay, down here, this is not clear, so I would clean it up. See? I also work around on different things. So when I work around, I look at different things and I do it differently. All right? Okay. Doors. We're still looking. This is one kind of door. Another kind of door, these are very common. I have them in my house, actually. And they're cross doors. And so you will see doors like this. And, the doorknob will be, here, let's say. Okay. But these are literally cross doors, and they started out in monasteries in Europe, and they just became a style. So now, again, in the States, if you go to Home Depot, you'll end up getting doors like this, and they have, this will be notched. See, so this comes out and it's notched. This is notched. These will come in on the corners like this. This will be notched, and it's literally a cross in the middle of the door. And, people don't even know what it is. They just think it's a door, but it's actually a cross built right into the door. And then the door is made out of wood, so you come in and you start doing things like this. Hinges, simple hinges. You can come in and just go like this. But draw a hinge. Don't just kind of, not put the hinge in there. Draw the hinge and you'll see it in there. Other hinges you'll see are going to be, and notice how I'm exaggerating everything in here too. I might have this hinge come in and then out and then come across like this. And this was to make doors stronger. Sometimes the hinges would come all the way across the door, but on this one, they wouldn't do it. You'd have a hinge here, you'd have a hinge here, and you'd have a hinge here. Other doors you'll see are double cross doors. And double crosses are like this one. It simply has a cross at the top, and it also has a cross at the bottom. So it goes like this. And that's another kind of door you see. So there are lots of different kinds of doors. And these are very 19th century. So you might see those in these shacks. Barrels, okay? In your shacks, you may want to draw barrels with them. So here's the top of the barrel. I tend to say make one side of the barrel a little straighter than the other. And don't make the banding too big, okay? Just kind of keep the banding small. The inside of the barrel is lower than the outside. And when you're designing these barrels, like everything else you're drawing, they're kind of falling apart, right? So on the sides, this is going to go like this. But what you want to do is make the tops a little lower and a little higher. So you're going to come in like this, right? And you'll do this in different stages. You'd take a little time and do this. I'm kind of going quickly because I want to get all this in. So we bring this in, see, kind of like this. I'd make my barrel a little thicker and thinner on the bottom too, like this. And then here on the far side, I have to do the same thing, see? So I'm going to come here and make my barrel a little bigger and a little smaller. So, you know, if you're drawing traditionally, my first barrel would be marker. And then I'm putting this in here like this, see? And this is a piece of wood in here, see? That's, you know, it's going to have like its own seams in it like that. And then when I come in and I put in the, when I put in my banding, which holds it together, see, don't let it get too thick. Everybody makes these bands that are super thick. And underneath the banding, see, we're going to have this kind of stuff going on, right? And that's going to make the barrel, you know, more successful. So you come in here and you bring the banding around. Don't let it get too thick. And then you're just going to draw the shadows underneath the band, but on top of the wooden barrel. Okay. All right. So, you know, if I come in here again, I'm working digitally. So I come in and I start cleaning this up. See, you can see what I'm talking about here. And when you're designing barrels, they're very helpful in these situations because they had a lot of barrels, you know, they had a lot of wooden barrels to carry things in. And so when you come in here, build this in, you know, these wouldn't have knot holes because that would be a really terrible barrel, but I put that in there anyway. And, you know, I just kind of bring this in on the edges. And, you know, you do it more carefully than I'm doing it. I'm just kind of showing you how to do it. When you're designing barrels, barrels are a great object to sort of have, here's one, here's one next to it, right? Here's a bigger one behind it. See? So what I can do is create depth this way. And then what I'm doing is saying, okay, and here is a coffee can on top of that one. And then here are things coming out of the coffee can, right? Here's another barrel in here. They cut it in half, right? So it's a half a barrel and it's full of things. If I put something in the front, the more I start piling things up, putting things in front and behind, the more realistic your picture is going to get, the more believable it's going to get. So, you know, I come in here, I'm showing you how to draw different kinds of objects. But, you know, if I come up here to say this shack here, if I start putting another barrel behind it over here, see, and I start putting things coming out of it, and I have something over here, and then I have something behind it over here, you know, and I start, you know, putting a tree behind it. The more I overlap things, the more realistic this picture will get, the more believable it will get. Here, if I come out here and in front of my barrels, I start putting some grass in here like this, the whole thing will get more believable. Okay. Well, so what did I say? The homework assignment is written in there on the sheet. So now, you know, go forth and make some great shacks. Okay. Okay. Look at some really interestingly shaped ones. Just boxes and prisms. That's all it is. All right. Okay. Okay, everybody. Have a great weekend. Have a great weekend. Okay. Take care.
Thanks.